Welcome, dear listener, to Whispers of the Night, your gentle escape into the quiet mysteries of old Paris. Tonight, we wander together through the cobblestone streets and hidden corners, where shadows hold stories and whispers linger long after the lanterns flicker. Make yourself comfortable, let your mind soften, and allow the city's secrets to drift slowly around you. If you enjoy this journey, subscribe to Whispers of the Night for more soothing tales that carry you gently into the evening, and turn on the bell so the stories find you wherever you rest. Tonight, we follow Élise Marenne, a young traveler discovering a lost letter that will lead her through the whispering streets of old Paris. Let the calm of the city embrace you as we step quietly into her story, letting each soft sound and gentle breeze guide you toward rest. Take a deep breath, feel the night around you, and prepare to drift along these ancient streets where history sleeps and secrets hum softly under the lamplight. Welcome, and may your evening be filled with calm wonder. Now, let us wander deeper into the whispering streets of old Paris, where the night holds its breath and secrets lie softly beneath the lamplight. Imagine Élise Marenne walking slowly through quiet alleys, her footsteps hushed on the cobblestones, each step carrying her closer to a hidden story waiting to unfold. The city is calm, almost as if it too is listening, letting the shadows curl gently along the walls, letting the mist wrap around the stones like a soft blanket. The air is cool, but welcoming, scented faintly with autumn leaves and distant bread from the bakeries. The lamplight flickers, casting golden warmth on her flowing olive-green plazo pants, on her cream-white sweater, and on the soft shadows of the buildings, creating a rhythm with the gentle sway of her steps. In this quiet, every sound is magnified: the rustle of leaves, the faint hum of the Seine nearby, the distant chime of a church bell, all blending into a melody of calm. Picture her reaching an old, hidden bookshop, worn journals stacked on shelves, secrets hidden in faded ink, whispering stories of a poet lost to time. Let your eyes relax, your breathing slow, and feel the gentle embrace of the city around you. Every corner holds a soft glow, every shadow a gentle lullaby, and every whisper carries the history of a city that has seen centuries pass quietly. Feel yourself drifting with Lisa as she uncovers a letter, touches the old pages, and allows the night to fold around her like a quiet, protective cloak. Let each word of the story sink in gently, your mind softening as the streets hum quietly with their centuries of secrets. Let your eyelids grow heavy, your thoughts gentle, and allow the calm of old Paris to carry you peacefully into rest. Drift with the city, drift with the night, and know that here, in these whispering streets, even time slows, bending softly into dream. Whispering streets of old Paris, the letter in the lamplight, The train from Lyon crept into Paris just as the last shades of violet dusk settled over the city, tinting the rooftops in muted lavender. Élise Marenne pressed her forehead lightly against the window, watching the blurred silhouettes of chimneys drift past. For years, she had dreamed of seeing Paris, real Paris. Not the glossy postcard version, but something about tonight felt different, heavier, as though she were stepping into a memory rather than a place. The station was almost too modern for what she imagined. But the moment she stepped outside the glass doors and onto a quiet street, she felt it, a breath of colder air, the scent of old stone, and the soft, distant echo of a street musician's violin fading down an alley. Evening had curled itself around the old district like a shawl. Her suitcase wheels clicked along the cobblestones as she followed the narrow lanes toward the small guest house she had booked. Street lamps flickered to life, one by one, spilling warm, golden halos over the uneven path. There was a peculiar hush, here no honking, no chatter, just the steady whisper of wind brushing against shuttered windows. Old Paris, she thought, isn't loud, it listens. Élise adjusted the strap of her bag, taking her time to absorb everything around her. The buildings rose high and close together, their facades worn but dignified, carved with delicate stonework that spoke of a century that refused to be forgotten. The roofs were steep, the balconies iron-wrought and curling like delicate vines. Even the silence seemed aged. She paused at the corner of Rue Lanterne, where a single lamp flickered roughly as if struggling to wake fully. Its amber glow stretched across the narrow street and illuminated a patch of cobblestone glistening faintly from a recent drizzle. And there, lying directly beneath that fluttering cone of light, was a small envelope at first. Élise thought someone must have dropped it moments ago. But the envelope was not soggy from the rain. It wasn't wrinkled nor trampled. It sat perfectly intact, as though placed with intention, almost staged. Something about it made the fine hairs on her arms lift. She looked around. The street was empty. A curtain shifted in a window far above, but she saw no one. Slowly, she approached the envelope. It was cream-colored, weathered around the edges, but sealed with an old-fashioned red wax stamp. The symbol pressed into the wax looked like an intertwined P and L, elegant, almost aristocratic. She crouched, hesitated for a breath, then picked it up. The weight of the letter surprised her. It felt heavier than normal, as though carrying more than a simple message. Turning it over in her hand, she squinted at the name written on the front in looping black ink. To Monsieur Adrien de Rue des Ombres, No. 12 Paris, 1894. Élise froze. The year alone carved a quiet gasp from her throat. The ink was slightly faded, yet unmistakably clear. Not smudged, not cracked, just aged, like a preserved relic. She brushed her thumb lightly over the numbers, half expecting them to crumble. This can't be real, she thought. Her heartbeat drummed. In her ears, logic stepped forward, offering explanations. Perhaps it was a replica, a prop for a film, or part of an art project. Paris was full of theater, of museums, of eccentric artists who loved blurring the lines between now and then. But every instinct told her this envelope wasn't some modern imitation. It carried the scent of old parchment, of unsaid words buried beneath time. The handwriting was elegant and sweeping, the style of a person long accustomed to quills, not pens. She looked again down the empty street. It remained silent, except for the soft groan of the weakening lamp above, holding the letter close. Élise stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do next. She could leave it where it was. She could knock on a door and ask if anyone had dropped it. She could toss it in the nearest rubbish bin, but none of those felt right. Something, curiosity, fate, the whispering of these streets pulled her deeper. Her guest house was only a few minutes away, but the walk felt stretched and surreal. She replayed the discovery in her mind, imagining a man in 1894, coat collar upturned, hurrying through rain as he clutched this letter. Did he lose it? Was it stolen? Or was it never meant to reach Monsieur Adrien d'Argens at all? The name tugged at her memory. D'Argens. Why does that sound faintly familiar? Perhaps from a literature class. Something about a poet or a painter. She couldn't remember clearly. Her mind buzzed with possibilities. When she reached the guest house, a quaint building with ivy trailing along its stone facades, she stepped inside to the gentle ringing of a bell. The lobby was small and warmly lit, decorated with antique furniture. That seemed to belong to the same century as the letter in her bag. The innkeeper, a plump man with round glasses and an even rounder smile, welcomed her kindly. After a brief conversation about check-in times and breakfast hours, he handed her a brass key attached to a velvet tassel. Room 12, mademoiselle. Up the stairs, second door on the right. She thanked him, and as she turned toward the staircase, the man hesitated, peering at her with a curious squint. "You look thoughtful," he observed with a tilt of his head. "Or troubled. Paris can do that to the newcomers. Or perhaps you stumbled upon something unusual." His tone was teasing, light, but Lisa stiffened slightly. The letter felt suddenly heavy in her bag again, just tired from traveling. She offered with a small smile. "Ah, of course. Rest well then." He nodded and returned to his ledger. But as she climbed the stairs, she could feel his eyes following her. Or maybe it was only her mind running wild. Once inside her room, she closed the door and exhaled deeply. The room was simple but charming. Pale cream walls, a small wooden desk by the window, and a view of the rooftops dipping into narrow alleys. She set her bag on the bed, unzipped it, and pulled out the envelope. She brought it under the yellow lamp on the desk. The wax seal gleamed slightly. She traced the monogram with her fingertip. P.L. Who was P.L.? And why did this envelope look untouched despite being dated 1894? Her fingers hovered at the edges of the seal. She wasn't sure whether opening it was disrespectful, illegal, or immoral, but she also felt an inexplicable responsibility. A letter lost for over a century, left exactly where she happened to pass. But as she debated, she noticed something she hadn't earlier. The wax seal had a faint crack on the lower left edge, as though someone had once attempted to open it, but stopped. Or perhaps it had simply aged. Still, the envelope remained closed. Élise leaned back in the chair, rubbing her forehead. She needed more information before she did anything rash. The name, the address, the date. Maybe she could research them tomorrow. Perhaps there was a historical database. Perhaps Adrien d'Argens was a known figure. She set the letter down gently on the desk, but before she could pull her hand away, something odd caught her attention. A sound so faint she almost doubted it, like a whisper, a soft, delicate rustle, as though the paper itself had sighed when she released it. The room was still. The window was shut. No breeze moved. She swallowed, Her rational mind insisted, paper shifts, that's all. But as she picked up the letter again, holding it near, her ear half out of foolish curiosity, she heard nothing, just silence. She placed it back down. No sound this time. Perhaps she was simply tired after a long shower and a brief attempt at journaling, one that quickly devolved into fragmented thoughts about letters, shadows, and centuries. Élise finally crawled into bed. She left the lamp on the desk dimmed, illuminating the edge of the envelope like a tiny lighthouse in the room. Sleep took longer than expected. Her mind refused to quiet, replaying the image of the letter beneath that flickering lamp, as though dropped by a messenger who stepped out of time. Sometime deep in the night, a distant church bell chimed. Élise stirred, half awake. Something had stirred her. A sound, a feeling, a shift in the room. She opened her eyes. The dim lamp on the desk cast long shadows, and for a moment she didn't see anything unusual. But then her gaze dropped to the letter, and her breath stilled. The envelope was no longer lying still. It sat at a slight angle, no longer exactly where she had placed it, as though nudged forward by a deliberate hand. Her heart thumped once, sharply. She slowly sat up. The window was still closed. No draft, no movement, no logical reason, yet the envelope looked as though it had inched toward the edge of the desk, toward her. Elise's throat tightened. She swung her legs over the side of the bed and approached it cautiously. Her hand trembled slightly as she touched the envelope again. It felt the same as before, dry, old, cool. But her instincts whispered that something was happening here, something not entirely logical, not entirely ordinary. A pulse of fear mingled with fascination. Finally unable to resist, she whispered softly into the quiet room, "Who are you meant for?" Her voice echoed slightly, swallowed by the silence. Of course, no answer came, but as she stood there, her eyes drifted to the name written in ink again, Adrien Dargens. And suddenly, with a clarity she couldn't explain, she understood one thing: whatever this letter was lost, forgotten, or stuck between centuries, it wasn't finished with its journey, and neither was she. Old Paris had whispered, and Élise had heard. Echoes in the antique bookshop. Morning arrived softly, its pale light crawling slowly across the rooftops of old Paris. Lisa awoke to the faint chiming of distant bells and the comforting creak of an old building stretching into a new day. For a moment, she lay still beneath the thin quilt, letting last night's strange events replay through her mind. The letter, the whisper-like rustle, the way it had shifted on the desk as if nudged by invisible fingers. When she finally sat up, the envelope remained where she'd left it, angled slightly more forward than before. She stared at it for several seconds, feeling a flutter of unease and anticipation. "Fine," she muttered under her breath. "I'll find out who you belong to." After dressing in a cozy sweater and scarf, she tucked the envelope carefully into her bag, making sure it lay flat so the fragile paper wouldn't bend. The hall outside her room smelled faintly of wood polish and morning coffee drifting up from the kitchen. By the time she reached the dining area, the innkeeper greeted her cheerfully. "Sleep well, mademoiselle." "Mostly," she said, offering a polite smile. "Do you know if there's a place nearby that sells old books, or maybe keeps historical records?" The innkeeper's eyebrows lifted slightly, as if the question stirred a memory. "Yes, there is an old place a bit hidden, Montmartre, Lever, Ancien. Very old, very dusty." He chuckled softly. "You will find everything there except modern prices." "Perfect," she replied, thanking him before grabbing a small croissant for the road outside. The early sunlight glowed warmly against the limestone buildings, the air crisp and tinged, with the scent of fresh bread escaping from nearby boulangeries. Paris was just beginning to wake, though old Paris, this older, quieter part, seemed to always rise more slowly as she walked. Her fingers brushed the outline of the envelope inside her bag. The urge to know more grew with every step. Lever Ancien was not easy to find. She wandered down several narrow alleys, following the innkeeper's directions as best she could. The bookshop seemed to hide itself deliberately, tucked away behind a small archway half covered in creeping ivy. A wooden sign, faded and cracked, hung crookedly above the doorway. "Librairie Montmartre, -1,821 livres, Ancients, Archives, Curious Sights." The door, painted a weary shade of green, groaned slightly when she pushed it open. She stepped inside. The interior was dim, lit mostly by warm lamps placed atop overstuffed bookshelves. The air smelled of aged paper, leather bindings, and a comforting scent that carried the weight of centuries. Books towered everywhere, stacked on tables, wedged into cupboards, piled high in corners where they risked collapsing into literary avalanches. Élise moved carefully down the central aisle, her fingers brushing the spines gently. Some titles were so faded that only impressions remained. Behind a desk near the back of the shop sat an elderly man with silver hair tied loosely at the nape of his neck. His round spectacles rested on the very tip of his nose, and he looked up slowly as she approached. "Bonjour, mademoiselle," he greeted, voice low and textured like worn parchment. "Looking for anything specific?" "I hope so," she said, pulling the envelope from her bag. "I found this yesterday. It looks old, very old. I thought maybe someone here could tell me more." His eyes sharpened instantly. He adjusted his glasses and held out a hand. "May I?" She hesitated a moment before placing the envelope in his palm. His fingers trembled slightly, not with age, but with recognition. He turned it over carefully. "Wax seal original. Ink 19th century, most certainly," he murmured. Then his gaze landed squarely on the name, and he went completely still. "Ah," he whispered, barely audible. "So it resurfaces." Elise's eyebrows knit together. "You know the name?" The shopkeeper looked up at her, a long breath leaving his chest. "You, my dear, are holding a letter addressed to one of Paris's most tragic and talented figures, Drine Dargens." The name echoed in the quiet shop, as if it belonged to a ghost lingering in the dust. "Who was he?" she asked. The old man leaned back in his chair, eyes drifting toward the shelves, as though searching the past. "A poet, a visionary, a young man whose words haunted the salons of Paris in the late 1800s. He wrote of shadows and secret passageways, of forgotten lovers and hidden truths. Many considered him eccentric. Others whispered he was dangerous because he knew too much. knew too much about what. The shopkeeper gave her a small, wary smile. Paris hides many things beneath its stones, mademoiselle. Some truths should remain buried. A tiny shiver climbed up her spine. And what happened to him? He vanished, the man replied. One evening in 1894, simply disappeared. No body found, no note left behind, only rumors and one unfinished poem. Elise felt her throat tighten. This letter, it was written the same year he vanished. Yes, the man murmured. Which means it could contain answers scholars have sought for over a century. He looked at the envelope again, reverently, as if holding a relic. Where did you find it? She explained, quickly walking through the street, the flickering lamp, the envelope lying perfectly dry after rain. As she spoke, the shopkeeper's expression grew increasingly intrigued, almost troubled. When objects from the past reappear unexpectedly, he said softly, they almost never choose their finder by accident. Elise didn't know what to say to that. It felt too mystical, too heavy, but at the same time, the words resonated uncomfortably well with the strange events of the night before. Can you help me? She asked finally. I want to know more. About him, about the address, written Rue des Ambers. I tried searching it this morning. No results. Of course not, the man replied. The street no longer exists. He rose from his chair with surprising agility for his age. But follow me. He led her through a maze of towering shelves to a small back room cluttered with files, maps, and stacked boxes that smelled of mildew and time. On the wall hung a massive map of parasoled brown and fragile looking. He tapped a thin finger on the faded lines. This is Paris as it was in the 1800s. And here he traced a narrow street, Rue des Ambers. The street curved like a crooked finger between two neighborhoods, but on modern maps, that entire curve was gone. What happened to it? Elise asked. The shopkeeper sighed, collapsed, or rather sealed. Why sealed? His eyes flickered toward her, cautious. There were whispers, something about a hidden passageway beneath the buildings, something Adrien wrote about in his journals, though his hand grew erratic toward the end. People dismissed him as delusional, but he paused. Not all were so certain. Do you have his journals? Elise asked suddenly, hope flaring inside her. Fragments, the shopkeeper admitted. Pages recovered over decades. They turn up in odd places, old basements, abandoned homes, attics. Some say the pages wander, appearing where they're needed. He began rummaging through a box labeled AD until he pulled out a thin, leather-bound notebook, missing half its pages. He handed it to her. Elise opened it carefully. The handwriting was elegant but uneven, as though rushed. Words sprawled across the page. The street remembers. The stones remember. Beneath them lies the truth they tried to bury. She felt chill. Another page. Rue des Ambers is not a street. It is a veil. Follow the whisper beneath the lamplight. Her breath caught. Lamplight. The letter. Her finding it under a flickering lamp. Was it coincidence or something more? The shopkeeper watched her reaction closely. You see now why scholars consider him peculiar. But what was he talking about? She asked. What truth? The old man stepped closer, lowering his voice to a near whisper. Adrien believed that beneath certain streets of Paris, older than the catacombs, older than records, there were hidden pathways used centuries ago for secret meetings, forbidden gatherings, lost lovers fleeing from the world above. His eyes glinted knowingly. He believed he had found one, and that someone wanted to stop him. Élise felt her pulse quicken. You think his disappearance was intentional? Not an accident? Accidents rarely erase entire streets from existence, the man replied bluntly. She swallowed hard. So this letter, she gestured toward it. Do you think opening it might reveal something important? The shopkeeper hesitated. It may contain answers, or dangers, or nothing at all. But if fate placed it in your hands, he closed the journal gently. Perhaps it is meant to be opened. He handed the envelope back to her, his voice strangely solemn. But be warned, mademoiselle. When you open a door to the past may open one back. A strange heaviness settled in her chest at his words. Before leaving, the shopkeeper pulled one last item from a drawer, folded, brittle map of old Paris from 1894. You may need this, he said. Rue des Ombres existed once, and some say its shadow remains. She accepted it with gratitude. As she stepped back out into the sunlight, she held the envelope, the journal fragment, and the map tightly in her hands. The street outside felt quieter than before, as if listening. Élise walked slowly, her thoughts tangled. Adrien d'Argens, a vanished poet, a sealed street, hidden passageways, whispers beneath lamplight. The mysteries weighed on her like a cloak she hadn't asked to wear, yet somehow fit perfectly. She didn't know why, but she felt it deep in her bones. The letter wasn't just a relic, it was an invitation, and somewhere, beneath the ancient stones of Paris, something waited for her to read it. Midnight footsteps in Montmartre. Twilight slid into Paris quietly, as though the sky were exhaling one long breath before surrendering to night. By the time Élise returned to her guest house, the city had already softened into evening hues deep, blue shading into velvet black, rooftops stitched with faint golden windows. The envelope lay on her desk like a second heartbeat. Every so often, she glanced at it, wondering whether tonight would be the night she opened it. But another pull tugged at her first. Montmartre, the shopkeeper's words from earlier. Follow the whisper beneath the lamplight. And in Adrien's journal fragment, the only location mentioned more than once was Montmartre, specifically its older, forgotten corners. So as night thickened, Élise wrapped a scarf around her neck, grabbed the fragile map the shopkeeper had given her, and slipped the envelope carefully into her bag. She felt strangely certain that the letter wanted to travel with her. Outside, the streets were draped in silver shadows. Lanterns flickered against the cool air. A soft hush lay over the neighborhood, the kind that made footsteps sound louder than usual. Montmartre was a half-hour walk uphill, a journey she made slowly, stopping whenever the narrow lanes seemed to hum with something ancient. When she finally reached the base of Montmartre's winding streets, the moon had risen high, bathing the hill in pale light. Street musicians played remnants of melodies that drifted between buildings like ghosts with unfinished songs. The map trembled slightly in her hands, not from wind, but from her own anticipation. Rue Blanche Diminuate, she murmured, tracing the faint line that marked a tiny alley near the top of the hill. The shopkeeper had warned her, streets like this one no longer appear on modern maps, but Adrien had written about it in his notes. It was where he believed the entrance to the hidden passageway might be. The alley was narrower than she expected, barely wide enough for two people to walk side by side. Its walls rose steeply, covered in ivy and old plaster. A broken lamppost leaned at the entrance, glowing faintly, though its glass was cracked. The moment she stepped in, the temperature dipped. A hush fell over the world. Even the distant music faded. She had the uncanny sense that the street had been waiting for her. Her footsteps echoed softly on the uneven cobblestones. Tap, 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 dot. The alley twisted left, then right, forming little pockets of shadow where the moonlight couldn't reach. The taller buildings loomed overhead like silent sentinels. And then she heard it, a whisper, faint, delicate like a breath brushing across stone. At first, she froze, thinking it was the wind slipping through cracks, but the whisper seemed deliberate, too close. She turned her head, scanning the shadows. "Hello," she called softly. "Nothing." She exhaled shakily and continued walking. The whisper came again, this time behind her ear, like the distant echo of a voice that had been trapped for years. The walls around her seemed alive. As she walked, the plaster cracked slightly in places, revealing faded murals beneath. Some showed musicians with sorrowful eyes. Others depicted lovers entwined in secret corners. The paintings were decades, maybe centuries old, but strangely vibrant. Then she heard another sound, footsteps, not hers, not echoing, following, soft, steady, measured, matching her pace whenever she slowed or quickened. Her heart thudded painfully. She resisted the urge to turn around. Instead, she kept moving, pretending not to notice. "No panic, no panic," she repeated internally. But the footsteps grew closer. She could feel eyes on her back. At the next junction of the alley, she stopped abruptly and spun around, empty. The narrow passage stretched behind her, shadows draped heavily over the cobblestones. The lamppost at the far end flickered once, weakly, as though startled. But no one was there. "Maybe I'm imagining things," she whispered to herself. Though she didn't wholly believe it, she kept walking further up the alley. The murals changed. These were less romantic and more unsettling. One showed a man running down a street, much like this one, glancing back over his shoulder in terror. Another depicted a set of underground arches, twisting like a labyrinth. The paint strokes were frantic, as if the artist had been rushed or frightened. She held her candle, taken earlier from the guest house lobby near the wall. The moment the flame's glow touched the mural, a strange thing happened. The painted shadows seemed to shift, subtle at first, like the illusion of movement, but then sharper, clearer. The painted man's expression, once frozen, now seemed to flicker with life. His eyes widened, his mouth parted in silent warning. Élise gasped and stepped back so quickly, she nearly fell. The flame wavered wildly. "That's not possible," she whispered. But something compelled her to bring the flame closer again. This time, the mural did not shift so much as reveal more. Hidden beneath the layers of paint, a faint silver outline glimmered. Words, a line of poetry, etched so thinly that without candlelight, it would remain invisible. She squinted and read aloud. "The night remembers what the living forgets." A shiver ran down her spine. Another flicker on the wall caught her attention, a second silver line appearing beneath the first. Follow the light to the street that breathes. The street that breathes. Rue des Ombres, the lost street. Adrienne's final destination before she could process what she'd just seen. A sudden sound snapped her out of the moment. Footsteps. Again, closer. This time they didn't try to hide. The rhythm was steady, confident, approaching from the darkened curve of the alley ahead. Her pulse thundered. She pressed herself against the mural, instinctively dimming her candle with her hand. A figure emerged from the shadow. Tall, dark coat, a hat pulled low, obscuring most of the face. He moved with eerie calm, as though he walked these forgotten streets every night. His footsteps echoed softly, deliberate. Elise's breath caught. She had the terrifying sense he wasn't someone ordinary, not a random passerby, not a tourist. Something about him felt wrong, as if he belonged more to 1894 than 20 to 5. The man paused under the faint light of the broken lamppost. Slowly, he turned his head toward her, though she couldn't see his eyes under the brim of his hat. She felt his gaze pierced straight through her. For several heartbeats, neither of them moved. Then, without a word, he reached into his coat pocket. Elise's breath seized, but instead of a weapon, he pulled out a candle. He lifted it to his lips and blew gently. The wick sparked to life with a small flame. No match, no lighter, just breath. He raised his candle toward the wall opposite her. Another mural came, alive in the flame's glow. This one was even more haunting. Adrien Dargins himself, painted in a swirl of frantic brushstrokes, strokes wide-eyed, hair disheveled, clutching a journal as he ran through an alley that looked exactly like the one they now stood in. The painted shadows behind him twisted like hands reaching for his coat. The mysterious man tilted his head as if studying the mural anew. Then his candlelight touched another hidden line of poetry that shimmered into existence. What hunts the poet hunts the truth. The man's head snapped toward Elise. Her body turned cold. He took a step toward her. She panicked, clutching her candle. She turned and bolted down the alley. Her footsteps clattered wildly. The murals blurred past her. She didn't dare look behind her, but she heard him, not running, walking, still steady, still close, as though he didn't need to rush, as though he knew she couldn't escape. Her lungs burned as she sprinted to the end of the alley, where it opened into a wider square. The faint bustle of nighttime Montmartre reached her ears. Laughter, clinking glasses, distant music, normal life. Safety. She stumbled into the square, chest heaving, candle flickering violently. When she finally turned around, half expecting the man to be right behind her, the alley was empty, completely, utterly silent. Not even the sound of footsteps fading, just nothing. He was gone. The alley looked much like it had earlier, except the broken lamppost now glowed a little brighter, as though the shadows were lighter somehow. Elise collapsed onto a nearby stone bench, trembling. Her candle flame sputtered unsteadily, but she kept it lit, gripping it like a lifeline. She forced herself to breathe, to steady her racing thoughts. The murals had shifted under candlelight. They had revealed new poetry. The man, whoever he was, had appeared exactly when she found those clues, and the silver lines on the wall had pointed her toward the street that breathes. Rue des Ombres. The lost street. Adrienne's final night. his disappearance, his unfinished poem. Someone or something still wanted to keep the truth hidden, but the past wasn't silent anymore. It was whispering, guiding, warning. And as Élise clutched the envelope to her chest, she felt it pulse faintly with warmth, as though alive. "All right," she whispered into the night, voice trembling but resolute. "I'll follow the whispers. I'll find the truth." The moon above Montmartre gleamed brighter, as if in answer, and somewhere behind the walls of old Paris, a hidden passageway waited for her to uncover its secrets. The secret beneath Rue des Silences. Élise found herself standing before the abandoned cafe that every clue had pointed toward. Montmartre's winding ascent had left her breathless, but it wasn't the physical climb that stole her breath, was the certainty in her bones that she was close, too close. The cafe sat at the corner of Rue des Silences, a narrow street that hadn't appeared on any modern maps. She only discovered it because one of the shifting murals had revealed its name, hidden beneath a stroke of peeled paint that hadn't been there minutes earlier. Even the alley itself felt as though it materialized for her and her alone. The street was tight, suffocated between two leaning stone buildings whose upper floors nearly touched. No pedestrians, no windows lit, no sounds from the main boulevard beyond. Rue des Silences lived up to its name. Sound seemed to dissolve the moment it entered. The cafe was a small, ghostly structure with its wooden sign still hanging by a single rusted hook. The name was half-faded, Élise Marenne. The windows were blind with dust, and the door was shut with layers of peeling paint that curled like old parchment. Lisa pressed her fingers against the wood. It groaned softly, as if relieved someone had remembered its existence. She pushed it open. Inside, the air was cold, not the type brought by winter, but that particular coldness that clung to abandoned places where memories outweigh the living. Dust lay in delicate sheets over every surface, as though the world had forgotten to breathe here. Tables were still set with chipped ceramic cups. A violin rested on a counter, its strings snapped, its bow missing. A faded photograph, framed and hung crookedly, showed a man standing in front of the cafe, tall, elegant, with melancholy in his eyes. She recognized him instantly. It was Lucien Armand, the vanished poet. Her pulse quickened. She stepped closer to the photograph. Suddenly, the floor creaked sharply behind her. She turned, but no one stood there. The cafe was still, motionless. And then she realized the creak hadn't come from behind her, but beneath. She lowered herself slowly, palms brushing the dusty floorboards. One of them was slightly ajar, its edge lifted as though someone had recently attempted to pry it open. Her breath caught. Could this be it? The secret the poet had taken to his grave. She edged her fingers into the gap and pulled. The board lifted with surprising ease, revealing a black metal ring embedded in the floor beneath Eton old cellar. Latch, ornate and intricate, shaped like the petals of a lily. Élise Marenne, indeed. Élise hesitated only a second before gripping the ring and pulling upward. the trapdoor opened with a sigh, exhaling a gust of cold, stale air. Beneath the cafe lay a narrow wooden staircase descending into darkness far thicker than the night outside. A faint light glimmered Bellasoft, pulsing as though waiting for her. She swallowed hard, stuffed the poet's old letter into her coat pocket for courage, and began her descent. Each step creaked under her weight, and the temperature dropped with every foot lower. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to stay warm, though a chill had settled somewhere deeper than her skin. When she reached the bottom, she stood before something she could never have imagined. An entire street stretched before her, underground, silent, breathing. It was narrow and perfectly preserved, as though frozen in the year 1894. Stone facades lined either side, complete with wrought iron balconies and shuttered windows. Above her, gas lamps flickered softly, flames dancing with a steady rhythm, impossible and mesmerizing. No one had lit them, no one had tended to them, yet they glowed, illuminating the ghostly street in warm, golden light. The underground air smelled faintly of old roses and forgotten rain. She stepped forward tentatively, her footsteps echoing against cobblestones that should not exist beneath the city. Every building she passed seemed poised to awaken, to shake off a century of dust, to whisper its stories. She whispered to herself instead, "Lucien, what happened to you here?" As if in answer, a soft breeze drifted down the street, though there was no place for it to come from. It carried with it a faint melody, gentle, melancholic, the echo of someone humming. The sound grew clearer with every step she took. It led her to a narrow doorway half covered by climbing vines that somehow survived without sunlight. The door bore a brass plaque, Armand Residence. Her knees weakened. Lucien had lived here. With trembling fingers, she pushed the door open. Inside was a small sitting room, layered with dust, but still full of life's remnants, books scattered across the floor. Ink bottles dried solid, candles melted into puddles of wax. A writing desk sat angled toward a tiny circular window that showed only darkness. On the desk lay pages of poetry, ink faded, but words still legible. She picked one up. "She is the breath I am forbidden. She is the light I cannot touch. Paris may forget me, but love will not. A forbidden love." Lisa read the lines twice, 3 times. The poet had written about a woman he loved deeply, desperately, someone who had been lost in the shadows of this underground world. Who was she? Why couldn't he be with her? She set the page down and noticed a smaller book tucked beneath the desk drawer. A diary, heart pounding. She opened it. August 3rd, 1894. I have brought her here again. The only place in this city where eyes cannot reach us. She trembles each time she descends the stairs, yet the underground street soothes her, as it does me. August 14th, they have begun to suspect us. Her absence does not go unnoticed above. We are 2 echoes running from a world that demands silence. August 21st, her father has threatened me, said poets have no place touching his daughter's future. I told him future means nothing without her. August 27th, they will come for me soon, but they will not find her, not here, not ever. She is safe in the quiet, in the world beneath Rue des Silences. Safe with me. Élise looked up sharply, her hidden down here with him. She glanced around the room. No sign of anyone else. But these entries were written days before his disappearance. Something terrible had happened. She continued reading. August 29th, they discovered the passage. I heard their boots. Above, I heard the keys. I heard the orders. I must choose the truth or her safety. I choose her. The remaining pages were violently torn out. A shiver went through her. The diary slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a soft thud. Suddenly, the gas lamps flickered wildly. A whisper drifted through the airsoft, trembling, unmistakably feminine. Lucien Élise spun around. A shadow moved at the far end of the underground street. Her breath hitched. She stepped outside, the diary still open. A woman's silhouette stood beneath a gas lamp, hair long and dark, wearing a gown that seemed to shimmer like mist. Hello, Élise whispered. The figure didn't answer, didn't move. The gas lamp above her flickered gently, making her appear almost translucent like memory, trying to hold shape. Are you his beloved? Élise asked, voice shaking. The woman lifted her head. Her face was pale but beautiful, with eyes that carried oceans of sorrow. She lifted a hand and pointed at something behind Lisa. Élise turned slowly. The far end of the underground street had changed. Where once there had been a blank stone wall, now stood a narrow archway. Faded petals were painted above it in black. Ink the same lilies from the cafe sign beneath the arch. Carved into the stone were 4 words. Love is not silence. The ghostly woman stepped toward the archway. She didn't walk, she glided, her feet barely touching the cobblestones. She passed through the arch, and for a moment, she dissolved into soft, swirling mist. Élise hurried after her dot. Beyond the arch lay a small chamber. In its center was a stone bench covered with dried flowers, roses, lilies, violets. The air smelled of faded perfume and longing. On the bench lay a small wooden box carved with initials, LACDCD, the lover's initials. Élise opened the box. Inside was a final letter, sealed in deep red wax. She broke the seal and unfolded the brittle paper. My dearest Camille, if you are reading this, then the world above has succeeded in silencing me. I do not fear silence not anymore. It is here, in this underground refuge, that I found your truth. They call our love a scandal, a stain, a sin. But it is they who have sinned, not us. For love is the one truth they cannot rewrite. If they take me, do not come searching. Live, breathe, love again. Let Paris forget me, but do not forget yourself. Remember only this, love deserves a voice. And if mine is taken, let yours echo for us both. Lucien tears blurred Élise's vision. A love forbidden by powerful families. A poet silenced by those who feared scandal more than truth. A woman forced underground, hiding in this silent refuge, with only memories to keep her alive. Élise whispered, I'm so sorry. Footsteps echoed behind her light, deliberate. She turned. The apparition of the woman Camille stood with a sad smile. She lifted a hand and touched the poet's letter. Then she faded into the air, dissolving like a final exhale. The underground street went still. The lamps dimmed. Silence settled once more, deeper than before. Élise closed the box. Gently, she knew now this secret had lived buried for over a century, but she would not let it remain hidden. Lucien had asked for a voice. Camille had endured in shadows. Their story deserved daylight. Clutching the diary and letter, she made her way back toward the stairs. When she reached the cafe above, she glanced back one last time. The gas lamps flickered in acknowledgement as though thanking her. Then the trapdoor closed, and Rue des Silences fell into darkness again. The whispering street speaks. The trapdoor groaned shut behind Élise, but the underground world did not fall silent, not this time. The whispering began the moment her foot touched the first step back down, like a breath drawn by ancient stone. At first, it sounded like faint gusts of wind, soft, almost hesitant. But by the time she reached the bottom of the stairs, the whispers had formed themselves into something unmistakable. Words, not spoken by any living tongue, but by the walls themselves. The underground street, once dim and frozen in stillness, now pulsed with a slow, rhythmic glow. The gas lamps, which earlier flickered lazily, burned with a renewed intensity, casting elongated shadows across the cobblestones. Shadows that shifted when she did not move. It was as though the street had awakened because she now knew the truth. Élise clutched the diary and the sealed letter she had found, holding them close as she stepped forward. The whispering grew louder, echoing down the narrow lane like conversations overlapping hundreds of voices layered in confusion. Sorrow, warning, Lucien, run. She cannot stay here. Love is a luxury your name cannot afford. They are coming, hide her. You must silence him. Élise froze. These were not sounds from the present. They were fragments of the past, memories imprinted upon stone, replaying themselves like broken reels of time. As she listened, the whispers formed patterns, loops, arguments, confessions, pleas. The underground street was not haunted. It was remembering. She took another step. Immediately, the air rippled. The world blurred at the edges, like heat-bending light. A form flickered into being ahead of her two blurred silhouettes. Translucent as rising steam, Lucien Armand stood with his back against the wall, his posture rigid, his eyes burning with desperation. Opposite him stood a tall, broad man with a hardened face Élise recognized from the diary, Camille's father. Their voices were faint echoes, as though submerged underwater. You will not take her, Lucien said, his voice trembling with controlled fury. I already have, Camille's father replied coldly. You think she belongs in this shameful place? With you, a poet with nothing but ruined dreams. Lucien's outline brightened, flaring like an ember protesting extinction. You don't understand. She is not safe. Above, you know what they will do to her. What you will let them do. I will do what must be done. The father's voice grew sharper. You are a stain on her reputation, Lucien Armand. Enough. End this. The scene dissolved, shattering like glass hit by sound. Élise stumbled backward, her breath catching in her throat. The echoes clung to her ears, vibrating in her skull. She pressed a hand against the nearest wall, steadying herself. The wall whispered back. This time, the whisper was a single voice, soft, fragile. Camille. He told them I was a danger, her voice murmured. He told them love had corrupted me, that I had lost myself. He told them to take everything from Lucien, and I let them. I was too afraid. Élise spun around, searching for Camille's ghostly form, but only shadows met her gaze. The voice continued, now in broken fragments. They dragged him out of this place while I hid in the dark. I was silent. I was a coward. I betrayed him. The pain in the voice was unbearable, like a wound that had never healed. Camille, Élise whispered, you loved him. You were scared. You were trapped. But Camille's voice faded like a dying flame. The silence that followed pressed heavily on Lisa's chest. She took a step forward, and the whispers surged again. This time, the street displayed a different memory. A group of men descended the stairs of the cafe. The trapdoor swung violently open above. Their boots struck the cobblestones with the force of soldiers executing an order. Lucien was dragged forward between them, his arms bound behind his back, his face pale but defiant. Where is she? One of the men demanded. Lucien said nothing. Tell us, poet, another hissed, or your pretty words will rot with you. Lucien lifted his chin. She is beyond your reach. The men laughed harshly, not for long. One of them struck him across the face with the butt of a pistol. The blow cracked loudly, echoing down the invisible corridors of time. Élise flinched as though struck herself. The memory continued. Lucien shoved forward, his knees hitting the ground. Someone spat at him. Someone else pressed a blade to his throat. The scene flickered, unstable, like a candle about to extinguish. One final whisper escaped the street, so faint she almost missed it. Forgive me, Camille. Then the memory dissolved entirely. Élise stood trembling in the center of the underground street, tears burning her eyes. They killed him here, she whispered. They silenced him beneath the city. A breeze swept through the underground passage, though there was no air to stir. It brushed past her cheek like a ghostly hand. She felt the weight of the truth in her hands, the torn diary, the final letter, the evidence of forbidden love and a silenced poet. The city above had erased his name, his story, his love. But beneath Paris, the truth had survived, and now she held it. But something deeper haunted her, something the whispers had not spoken aloud, but she could feel its shape forming. Lucien had not merely been killed, he had been buried here, somewhere in this underground street, beneath cobblestones or behind forgotten walls. He remained unmarked, unmourned. Unheard. Her breath caught. She had to search. She had to know. The whispers seemed to agree. They grew urgent, guiding her. She followed the faint tug in the air, the subtle shift of lamplight, until she reached the far end of the street, where the stone changed color, older, darker. A faint outline was etched into the wall, easily mistaken for mere cracks. But when she ran her fingertips across it, she felt the unmistakable shape of a door, concealed beneath layers of stone, as if sensing her touch. Whispers seeped from the cracks, slower, heavier, filled with sorrow. Here, Élise stepped back and pushed with all her strength. The stone creaked, grinding against the floor. Dust rained down, choking the air. With one final shove, the disguised door opened into darkness. Inside was a small chamber, bare, silent, oppressive, and at its center lay a slab of stone, a makeshift tomb. She approached slowly, her heart pounding upon. The slab was a carving, faint and nearly lost to time, silenced, but not forgotten. Her throat tightened. She placed a shaking hand on the stone slab. The cold seeped into her skin. A soft whisper rose from the tomb Lucien's voice, faint but filled with longing. Did she ever forgive me for protecting her? Élise swallowed hard. She loved you, she whispered. She never forgot you. The chamber brightened slightly, as if the underground world exhaled in relief. But a new weight settled in Élise's heart. Some truths saved the dead, others destroyed the living. If she revealed what she discovered, the crime, the silencing, the cover-up, she would shatter the legacy of powerful families. She would drag Camille's descendants into the spotlight. She could ignite scandal, ruin reputations, unravel carefully curated histories. The truth could free a ghost but imprison the living. Her mind raced. Was it her responsibility to tell the world? Or was preserving peace more important than justice? For the dead, the whispers around her shifted, swirling like a gathering storm. Some voices urged her, tell them, let the truth breathe, give him back his name. Others warned, it will destroy them. History has teeth. Silence protects. Élise clutched the diary to her chest, torn between past and present, between love and consequence. She felt the weight of centuries pressing against her. What should I do? She whispered into the dim chamber. For a long, breathless moment, the underground street fell silent. Then a warm, familiar glow spread through the room. Camille's figure emerged softly from the shadows, gentle, sorrowful, resolute. Her voice drifted like a sigh. You must choose, Camille said. He chose me. I chose fear. You must choose truth or mercy. Élise stared at her, trembling. What would you want? Camille closed her eyes, her form flickering. I would want the living to be free from our pain, she whispered. But I would want Lucien to be remembered. Élise's heart ached to desires, two paths, and only one human heart to carry them. Camille's voice softened. Whatever you choose, do it with love. Then she faded, gentle as smoke dissolving into air. The street dimmed again. Élise stood alone in the chamber, the weight of the past in her hands, the responsibility of the future on her shoulders. And above her, far above, the city of Paris continued to breathe. Unaware, she wiped her tears and closed the stone door behind her as she walked back down the underground street. The whispers grew faint, then softer still, like a lullaby fading into memory. By the time she reached the stairs leading up to the café, one final whisper brushed her ear. Listen to your heart, Élise pressed a hand to her chest. She would decide, but not tonight. Tonight, she carried the truth with her, and the whispering street fell quiet. Dawn over the Seine. Paris was still asleep when Élise emerged from the abandoned cafe, closing the warped wooden door behind her. The air above ground felt startlingly different, lighter, but strangely empty, as though the world had been hollowed out while she traveled through its hidden veins. Rude silences, which only hours ago pulsed with echoes from a century past, now seemed ordinary in the pale pre-dawn light. The narrow stones washed in faint silver. The silence felt gentler now, like the sigh of a story that had finally finished telling itself. Élise stepped onto the deserted street and inhaled deeply. The fragrance of baking bread drifted faintly from distant boulangeries, preparing for the morning rush. Somewhere far off, a bicycle rattled across cobblestones, the real Paris alive, waking, unaware of the ghosts stirring beneath its feet. She clutched her bag to her chest. Inside lay the diary, the sealed wooden box with Camille's initials, and most importantly, Lucien Armand's unfinished letter, now completed, not by his hand, but by the truth she had uncovered. Truth she alone carried. Her legs ached from hours of wandering the underground labyrinth, yet she felt too restless to stop. Her heart was heavy, but her steps light, driven by the faintest whisper of purpose. The Seine called to her, not with a voice, but with a pull, gentle, insistent, inevitable. The city was still transitioning from night to dawn as she made her way down the winding streets toward the river. Buildings stretched upward like sleeping giants, their shutters closed tight. Street lamps glowed in uniform rows, casting long golden lines along the pavement. She passed a florist arranging buckets of lavender outside her shop. The woman didn't look up. A baker rolled out dough in a fogged window, shaping croissants. In rhythmic motions, a stray cat hopped onto a stone ledge and observed her with curious golden eyes. It was a different Paris than the one she had come to know, in the underworld, one wrapped not in secrets, but in routine. The sky above the city bruised gently at the edges, shifting from deep blue to lavender to the barest hint of rose. Élise walked as though drawn forward by invisible hands. The river awaited when she reached the Seine. Dawn was just beginning to unfurl across the horizon. The water glimmered softly, ripples reflecting pale ribbons of gold. Bridges arched gracefully across the river like ancient rib bones, each carrying centuries of footsteps, lovers, confessions, and unspoken wishes. Élise paused at the edge of the Pont des Arts, the bridge that once overflowed with lovers' locks. Most were gone, now removed for safety, or so officials said, but small clusters remained in secret corners, shining in soft metallic hues. A gentle breeze brushed past her, lifting strands of her hair. She leaned against the railing and closed. Her eyes sought silence, but not the suffocating silence of Rue des Silences. This was a peaceful silence, like the exhale that follows grief. She reached into her bag and pulled out the letter. It was old, fragile, its edges browned, its folds softened by time. Lucien's handwriting swept across the page in elegant strokes, confessions of love, hope, and fear. But the letter had ended abruptly years ago, before his final thoughts could reach the woman he loved. And now, beneath his words, in her careful, smaller handwriting, Élise completed the letter not as herself, but as the voice of truth, the voice that time had stolen from him. She unfolded it once more and read it quietly, letting the words settle into the morning air. My dearest Camille, I write to you knowing the world above has turned its back on us, but the world below, our hidden street, remembers everything. It remembers your footsteps, your laughter, your trembling hands when you feared you would lose me. It remembers our promises, our whispered confessions, our stolen hours. If this letter never finds you in life, let it find you in memory. Let it tell you, I never betrayed you. I never regretted loving you, even as they dragged me away, even as silence closed in around me. I held your name like a flame in my heart. I hope you lived. I hope you breathed without fear. I hope Paris became kind to you. I hope you loved again, and that your love was allowed to bloom in the light. Do not mourn me. I was not lost. I was waiting for truth, for voice, for someone brave enough to listen to the whispering street dot. And now, thanks to her, these words will reach you at last. Love is not silence. It never was. Lucien Alice's throat tightened. Her reflection in the river blurred whether from tears or the moving water. She could not tell. The letter fluttered slightly in her hands, caught by the breeze. She pressed it gently to her lips, giving a silent kiss goodbye on behalf of two souls long parted. Then she whispered, "This is your dawn." Slowly, she lowered the letter toward the Seine. The paper trembled. Hungry for release, she let go. The letter drifted downward, as delicate as a falling petal, before touching the water's surface with a soft ripple. The current carried it gently, away toward the arches of the bridge, toward the waking heart of Paris, toward the horizon glowing with new light. For a moment, Lisa watched it float, trembling with emotion she could not name. She felt as though she were releasing not just a letter, but centuries of silence, sorrow, and unfinished love. As the letter drifted, the faintest whisper, quieter than a breath, quieter than memory, brushed her ear. "Thank you, Lucien." Voice, dot, and then be free. Camille's Élise gasped, a soft sound that broke into a trembling smile. The whispers faded, not abruptly, but like a gentle tide retreating from the shore. The underground street, true day, silences finally rested. Its stories had been heard, its ghosts had been freed, its echoes had softened into silence once more. The sun finally broke. The horizon gold spilled over the rooftops, washing the Seine in shimmering radiance. The bridge glowed as though forged from light. People began to appear, lovers walking hand in hand, painters setting up easels along the quay. Life resumed. Élise remained on the bridge, watching the river carry the letter farther and farther until it was no longer visibilized into the folds of the city, like all forgotten things. But she knew it wasn't lost. Stories never disappear. They only wait. A soft rustle came from her bag. She reached inside and pulled out Lucien's diary. The leather cover was cracked, the pages fragile, but she held it with reverence. Should she publish it, reveal everything, immortalize the truth, or protect the living families that unknowingly carried the weight of their ancestors' sins? The question still lingered, but now it felt lighter, less like a burden, more like a choice she could make when the time came. For now, she would hold the story, protect it, honor it. She traced her fingers along the embossed initials, LAA name, once buried in silence, now reborn, at least in the heart of one woman. She looked over the river one last time, letting the breeze cool her cheeks. The rising sun warmed her back. Somewhere in the distance, church bells began to toll softly. She whispered to the river, "I heard you. I heard all of you." Paris answered only with a gentle breeze and the distant hum of life beginning anew. But beneath it, all beneath, the rhythm of footsteps and voices and bicycle wheels, Lisa sensed a deeper stillness, a peaceful stillness. Rue des Silences had exhaled its story. Now it slept, content, and someday, maybe decades or centuries from now, someone else would wander down its forgotten path. someone who would pause at a flickering lamppost or feel a shiver of curiosity at the sight of an old cafe, someone who would dare to listen again. Élise smiled faintly at the thought. Stories survive because people return to them. She pressed the diary to her chest, breathed deeply, and stepped off the bridge. The sky had brightened completely, now lavender, giving way to gold, and gold to the soft blue of morning. She walked slowly, her footsteps steady, following the curve of the river as she disappeared into the waking city. Behind her, the Seine carried the letter onward, gently rocking it in its eternal flow. Ahead of her, Paris stretched out wide, vibrant, ancient, alive, and somewhere deep under its streets, in a world most would never see, love lingered quiet at last, whispered into peace. As dawn rises over the Seine, Élise Marenne releases the letter into the gentle current, letting the whispers of the night rest for now. The city breathes softly, holding its stories until another night calls them forth. Sleep peacefully, and let the quiet streets of old Paris linger in your dreams.